And good morning. Thank you very much for being here today. What a great crowd. I'm Lyle Jepson, Executive Director of the Chamber of Economic Development. We appreciate the fact that you are here. As I look around, I see all of our members out there. Thank you for your membership to the Chamber of Economic Development. Today we are very fortunate to have the governor with us. In a moment, Butch Shaw will introduce the governor. Wanted to first introduce the staff that makes this possible, the CEDRR staff. They include, and just raise your hand when I say your name, please. Cooper Babbitt is over here. Olivia Lyons is taking pictures right there. Crispin White is right there. He was in the parking lot. Thank you, Crispin. Bill Lucci is seated here. Right. Bill, raise your hand. Thank you very much. All right. We also have Lori Pinkowski, who is over here. We have Shasta Matino, who is over here. We have Mose Casaro, who is over there. Carly Haven is here, and would you give them a nice round of applause? They're amazing people, working for you every day, so thank you. Also would like to thank our sponsors. We had to help them find their table with a sign. Every year, Omnia has been sponsoring this event to bring you the latest in what's happening in the legislative session. And we appreciate their support. John, thank you very much for the work that you folks do in our county. You employ a lot of people, and you do a lot very quietly for the community that many people don't know about. And so let's give Omnia a nice round of applause for their sponsorship, support of the community. Also wanted to thank, is David Jeffers here? Can you go get David? Did he shuffle back to the kitchen? Southside Steakhouse is always a great supporter of us, and they do things like this. And we say, could you do 100 people? And then we hear the governor's coming. Could you do 150 people? And they say, no problem. So in a minute, David is going to come out. We'd like to also thank Peg TV for being here. And oh, you already hooked up the governor. Thank you very much. Thank you. The governor has a lapel pin, a lapel mic, and we decided not to hook him up until everybody else stopped talking because we didn't want to catch him saying anything at the table, because it is being recorded. And here's David Jeffers, ladies and gentlemen, from Southside Steakhouse. Thank you very much. He and his team do amazing things. And I also want to take this opportunity to thank folks that we don't often, or maybe are not called out enough. People that do a lot for our communities. The governor, I think, and I'm not trying to put words in his mouth, my apologies, I think he's a real public safety advocate when that comes to firefighters, when it comes to EMTs, when it comes to the police force. He has been greatly supporting them through the work that he does. I want to thank Chief Kilcullen, who is here, Brian Kilcullen. Also, we have Officer Rosario, who is here, who we often see in our downtown. Two people that, amazing to watch them as they de-escalate things that are going on. It is amazing to watch the skills that they have. And we'd like to give them something. I will say, I've never seen a police officer in Rutland eating a donut. Honest, I've never seen a police officer in Rutland eating a donut. I have seen them drinking a lot of coffee. And so I don't know if one or both of you would like to come up, because we have about, and it'll be hard to believe, there are about 120 cups of coffee in this bag right here. So would one of you like to come up during the applause for thanking you for everything you do for our community? Officer Rosario, get up here. Brief story, some of our staff were parked inappropriately on Merchants Row one day.
Thank you very much.
Officer Rosario, no, you gotta wait now. Officer Rosario comes in and he says, because they all got tickets, you get out there, you get those tickets, and you put them in my hand. And they did. They went out. They got tickets. I'm rolling laughing in the office as he is taking care of these tickets for them. Never did they park inappropriately again. attitude and support. Thank you very much. All right. And you will hear Rutland City PD, and this is on their website, and it's so true. The Rutland City Police Department is dedicated to protecting and serving our citizens through professionalism, courtesy, compassion, and community partnership. Thank you for everything you do. During the governor's discussion today, there are cards on your table and some pens. And if you would like to write down a question, please feel free to do that. And Cooper is going to come around later. If you just hold him up, he'll come around and pick those up for you. We'd like to do some brief introductions of folks who are very important to our county, and they include our legislative delegation. And if you would please just stand and raise your hand, and I am sure that I'm going to miss someone. My apologies in advance to Bill Canfield. Where's Bill Canfield? Would you stand up? All right, I will not forget Bill Canfield. All right. Also, Brian Collmore, Senator Brian Collmore, Senator Terry Weeks. Keep the applause going. Get up, Terry. All right, yeah. All right. We also have Paul Clifford, Representative Clifford, Representative Harrison, Jim Harrison. We have, is Eric McGuire here? Where's Eric? Representative McGuire is here. Representative Knott is here. Representative Peterson is here. Representative Shaw is here. This is the embarrassing moment in time. Who did I forget? Thank you, Lori. We didn't forget anybody. All right, we'd also like to introduce the mayor of the fine city of Rutland, Mayor Michael Dunges, who is here with us today. Thank you. And to introduce the governor today, we have a very special person. Butch Shaw is the delegation chair for our county. Butch has been in the legislature for 15 years now. And during that time, and currently, he is serving on the House Committee on Transportation as vice chair. He's on the Joint Legislative Management Committee. He's on the Legislative Advisory Committee on the State House. And Butch has been in the region, and I think, Butch, you're a lifelong Vermonter. Is that correct? Butch was born in Middlebury. He trained at the Technical Training Massachusetts trade shops in Boston and became an electrician and traffic signal technician, owning his own business starting in 1980. Married Mary, one of the best decisions of his life, and then went on to have a son, Dana. He's currently, Butch is the senior safety officer and retired assistant chief of the Pittsburgh Fire Department, member since 1969, which does not make him old, it just means he's been there on the department for a while. He's currently chair of the Pittsburgh Board of Civil Authority and Justice of the Peace, legislative representative and commissioner to the Northeast Forest Fire Protection Commission since 2012, and has been the delegation chair for 13 years now. This speaks to Butch's deep respect that he has from his colleagues. When people talk about Butch, and why am I talking about Butch now? Because Butch has decided that he wants to go home and be in Pittsburgh for a while and is not running again. And when people talk about Butch, they talk about him as being a listener. He's trustworthy, he's forthright, he's straightforward, he's focused. Butch has worked for us, for which we are internally in your debt, Butch. Now, that said, Mary has projects for you to look forward to. But in your spare time, and this is now the joke from the Chamber of Economic Development, we have this Peter Huntoon puzzle. We do not know anyone who has ever completed this puzzle. We know you're going to have a lot of spare time, so this is your departing gift and prize, and we expect you to be around a card table, and maybe Art will be there because he's not running again. And then also Paul might be around that table because he's not running again. And so I'm going to give this to Mary because this is... Now, I must say, when these puzzles arrived, we thought we're going to make a lot of money off these puzzles. They're Peter Huntoon puzzles. Everybody wants one. It's true. We've made a lot of money off those. Nobody has ever said they've completed it. And so my sense is that when we opened up the boxes, they actually were from China. And so maybe a mistake on our part. because we believe the intended purpose was to confuse and frustrate the puzzler. And I think that's happened. So when we order again, we're going to go American-made, and we're going to make sure that the puzzles can be completed. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like you to help me in welcoming and thanking Butch Shaw for 15 years of service to the Rutland community. Down a little bit. Okay.
Wow. Woo. Thank you, Lyle. Thank you, everybody. It's been quite a ride for Mary and me over the last 15 years, and we appreciate the support we've had from you all in this trip that we've taken. So thank you, Lyle, for the great introduction. My honor today to introduce the governor of this great state, and my introduction for the governor will be much shorter than what Lyle talked. So we're going to get to the person that you're really here to see and listen to. So before I get into that introduction of today's esteemed guest, I'd like to take a moment on behalf of the tripartisan Rutland County Legislative Delegation. I'd like to thank Amya and CEDRR for sponsoring and hosting today's legislative breakfast. We as legislators really do appreciate the opportunity to mix with all of you and try to answer your questions, listen to your thoughts, and just say hello. We'll be available at the close of today's events to have those conversations. Phil Scott's political career began as a member of the Vermont Senate, and he served there for 5 terms representing the folks in Washington County. While he was in the Senate, he served as Vice Chair of the Transportation Committee, sounds like a familiar position, Governor, and the Chair of the Institutions Committee. In 2011, he successfully ran for the office of Lieutenant Governor, where he served 3 terms. While serving as Lieutenant Governor, he was instrumental in helping Vermonters recover from the devastation of Tropical Storm Irene, particularly in Rutland County. Just off script a little bit, my vision of the governor at that time, and lieutenant governor at that time, in Brandon, the center of town was devastated during Irene, and the water actually picked up the Brandon House of Pizza building, floated it into the middle of Route 7, and dropped it there. Lieutenant governor came down to Rutland County the next day, toured Rutland County, and decided that we all needed some help. My vision of him is the day after he had arranged for a crane to come from DeMag Crane, and I remember him crawling underneath the Brandon House of Pizza to direct the crane operator how to pick the building up. And it was successful. He tore the building down when he got done, the governor, but it was successful. So thank you for that. Philip B. Scott became 82nd governor of Vermont in January of 2017 and was reelected to his 4th term in 2022, where he won the majority of votes in every city and town in the state. In 2020, the reelection bid, he earned more votes than any candidate for governor in Vermont's history. And rumor has it he'll be running for reelection in 2024. Is that right, Governor? Seems to be right. Throughout his many years in public service, Phil has listened to and learned from Vermonters all across the state with a commitment to making Vermont more affordable, growing the state's economy while protecting our most vulnerable citizens. Phil cares about Vermonters and has shown that through his many community service projects he has either participated in or founded over his long political career. One that stands out for Rutland and Bennington counties is the Wheels for Warmth program that the governor founded in 2005, where Vermonters donate tires they no longer need. Tires are inspected and are resold or recycled at affordable prices, with all the proceeds benefiting the Vermont's Emergency Fuel Heating Assistance Program. Brock is a recipient of over $25,000 annually to augment their emergency heating program in Rutland and Bennington counties, a benefit of Wheels for Warmth. Phil Scott is a lifelong Vermonter who grew up in Barrie, graduated from Spalding High School and the University of Vermont. For more than 30 years, he was co-owner of his family construction business and has, to this day, been known as some sort of a stock car driver of some renown at Barry's Thunder Road, where he has the most career wins as the late model driver of car number 14. The governor currently lives in Berlin with his wife, Diana McTeague Scott, and his two grown daughters, Erica and Rachel. So everybody, let's give a warm Rutland County welcome to the governor of the great state of Vermont, Philip B. Scott.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Butch, thank you very much for the introduction. And I wouldn't open up that puzzle quite yet because Mary, you know, after about 6-8 months of him, you might send him back, number one. Number two, we have a few boards and commissions we need members for, so we have your number. So again, thank you very much for your service for all of these 15 years. It's been great working with you. I want to also thank Lyle for his service to the community and also for serving on our State Board of Education. Been a valuable member there. And good morning to all of you. It's great to be here. So as Butch had alluded to, and has heard me say before, when I first ran for office 8 years ago, I had 3 simple but very important goals: to grow the economy, make Vermont more affordable, and protect the most vulnerable. And today, I wanted to talk a little bit more about why I see these priorities as important in the first place, and why they still make sense today. And the way I saw it, and still do, Vermont has more than its fair share of challenges. For decades, our population hasn't changed much, but it's shifting and aging, which leads to a shrinking workforce and fewer kids in our schools. Just think about these 3 statistics. As of 2022, we have 14,000 fewer kids under the age of 18 than we did in 2010. There are 28,000 fewer people between 40 and 54, which is the core of our workforce. And we have 48,000 more over the age of 65. That pretty much sums it all up. At the same time, we also have lost major employers that were the lifeblood of their communities. Think about the number of colleges we have lost: Vermont Yankee, Energizer, Kennametal, Putney Paper, Vermont Bread Company, and many, many, many more. These losses in students, workers, and jobs have been devastating in many regions, mostly outside of Chittenden County, creating a gap between the Northwest and pretty much everywhere else in the state. So I ran for office to focus on the fundamentals so we could overcome these challenges, retain and attract more workers, revitalize communities that have been left behind, and give Vermonters more opportunities. Every proposal we've made to the legislature, every budget decision, every bill I vetoed had these challenges and these goals in mind. And while we've seen some setbacks over the last year or so, we have made some progress over the years, especially as a result of billions in federal dollars which we've invested in communities and infrastructure. And this includes investing in important projects here in this area, like the food center, the airport, the library, Paramount Theater, Killington, and many, many more. These are the kind of fundamentals that will help restore our regional economic centers like Rutland to what they once were. But it's going to take a lot more work to reverse our demographics. And right now, I believe that requires focusing on affordability, housing, and public safety. So let's start with public safety, as that was one of the bright spots of the legislative session, at least for me. And that's because it was an area where we met in the middle and had the courage to reverse course on some previous legislation. I give a lot of credit to Senator Sears, who unfortunately passed away a few weeks ago, because of his willingness to listen and work together, and that made all the difference in the world. None of us got everything we wanted, but we each gave a little to come to a compromise we could all agree on. I've heard directly from many in this community, as well as others across the state, about the need for action sooner rather than later. And the data shows us you've been right to be concerned, which is why I was pleased to sign 2 major public safety bills into law, S58 and S195, which address a few of our collective concerns. We know many crimes in Vermont are the result of drug trafficking. S58 increases enforcement of these crimes, which is critical to slowing down the deadly supply of drugs coming into the state. We've also focused on repeat offenses, because we've all seen people committing crimes only to be back on the street recommitting just hours or days later. Now, S195 made changes to the conditions of release and bail to give judges more tools to get people into court and hold them accountable. And while these bills aren't going to solve all our problems, they're important steps forward. And my team will continue to work closely with law enforcement and providers of human services throughout the state as we continue to focus on this serious challenge. I also believe housing is key to addressing this and other challenges like demographics, affordability, workforce, and so much more. And 2 years ago, as a reminder, most of us campaigned on the crisis it is, which is why I'm so disappointed that while we made progress for places like Rutland, we left far too many communities behind and far too many tools on the table. Some communities need more homes on the market. Others, like Rutland, in my hometown of Barrie, while we still need more units, we have some, but they're all in disrepair and they need more investment. This is despite the state spending $500 million for housing since the pandemic. But what we need to remember is government isn't the major player in the housing sector. Government only produces about 15% of the housing, always has. And I don't believe they should be doing more. Private industry should. And there are many reasons why they're not keeping up, which is why I asked for common sense changes to Act 250, local zoning, appeals, and tax incentives. Tax incentives are important. The goal is to make it faster and less expensive to build new homes and upgrade vacant units, so we can help drive down the cost for homeowners and renters. Unfortunately, despite having tripartisan support and my support early in the session, we had a bill. Neither the House or Senate passed the bill we all agreed on. In fact, they didn't even take it up in the House. Instead, they waited until the end of the session and squeezed some housing proposals into a conservation bill that will make it harder to build in many parts of the state, but especially in rural Vermont. Now, I vetoed this bill and offered a counter-proposal that would have helped more communities outside the population centers of Burlington, Williston, Barrie, Montpelier, and Rutland, and many others, with their housing needs. Unfortunately, the legislature overrode my veto, so we're left with coming back to them again next year to make much needed improvements. But the clock is ticking, and the longer we wait, the worse it gets. On the affordability front, it's difficult to know where to start. You may have noticed, may have heard, some in the legislature haven't been too happy with me for sharing my concerns about a few things they've done the last couple of years. That's my job as governor, to let folks know what's heading their way so they can prepare. Because some are going to be shocked in July when they see more coming out of their paychecks as a result of the payroll tax the legislature passed last year. Or when they register their vehicle and get their license renewed and pay 20% more. Or in August, when we have the property tax bills arrive in our mailboxes and they see the 14% increase the legislature just passed. Or in 2 to 3 weeks, when places like, or 2 to 3 years, I should say, when places like Mendon, places outside the population centers, can't put a shed on their property or expand a garage at their business without an Act 250 permit. And when you receive your electric bills and they start to go up over the next several years as a result of the renewable energy standard, which could have been much more affordable with a plan my team had proposed. And if the legislature moves forward with the clean heat standard next year, home heating fuel will be on the rise as well. These are all decisions the legislature has made, each one of them over my veto. And for each one of them, we could have gotten to the same place for less money if they worked with me on a compromise. I've tried with proposal after proposal to meet them where they are and asking them to meet me in the middle. But for the last 2 years, they've shown no interest in doing so, which is why I believe it's so important to speak directly to Vermonters and be honest about where I think the state is heading. Believe me, I hope I'm wrong. And if I never have to issue another veto, I'd be happy. That's not my goal. My goal is to make Vermont more affordable, more livable. But there's got to be more balance in the State House, more common sense, more folks who realize how much burden we're putting on Vermonters and employers like many of you. In the past, we've been able to do so, and I remain ready and willing to work together. But compromise and bipartisanship is a two-lane street. It's not one way, it's two-lane. Senator Dick Mazza, a Democrat from Grand Isle, knew this very well. Like Senator Sears, Senator Mazza passed away earlier this year, and both are a huge loss for the Senate and the state. But I want to talk a little bit more about Senator Mazza, as he was my friend, my mentor, and served as a role model for many. He owned a store in Malice Bay, lived out back of the store for 60, 70 years, and served in the legislature for over 40 years. Many have said he was the most influential member of the Senate for most of his time there, and I believe he was. But many of you may have never even heard of him, and that actually tells you a lot. He wasn't on Twitter. He didn't make the kind of negative, fiery comments that will lead you to getting quoted in the paper. And as influential as he was in the State House, I don't believe I heard him speak during floor debates more than a dozen times in my years in the Senate. Just so you know, many speak that much in 1 week. He wasn't about grandstanding. He was about listening. And because of that, he got things done for the people of Vermont. His approach, his kindness, his humor, and his character earned him the respect of his constituents, legislators, and governors of both parties. In fact, he and I were best of friends, inside and outside the State House. He was a Democrat, and I'm a Republican, almost unheard of in these polarizing times. The fact is, we need more people setting this kind of example. And the more of us who do, the more it will catch on. Because what I've seen over the years, especially during difficult times like last summer's flooding, is that kindness is contagious, which is important because our kids are watching. So if we want all the anger and division we're seeing to subside, we need to do our part. I saw this for myself back during my racing career. I'm still racing, by the way, but I call it following now. It's not as much racing. I never thought of myself as a role model. I just was there to race. But then I met a young fan who had the number 14, my race car number, shaved onto the back of his head. That's how much I meant to him. So whether I liked it or not, I was his role model. And I had to think about what that meant. Because the fact is, kids learn from us. They want to be just like us. So I'd ask you today to think about what you can do to help make your communities and state a better place to live, which I know is something you care a lot about already. I had the honor of giving the eulogy at Senator Mazza's funeral. I want to leave you with something I said to his family and friends. There are people in the world who live by example, and then there are those who set them. Senator Mazza set the example with decency, compassion, and humor. Today, we can all think about how to be that person as well, the one who sets the example for others to follow. So, with that, I look forward to your questions.
Am I on, Tom? Okay. First of all, PEG TV would like to thank you for your support for public television. And I'll give my State Board of Education Lyle's hat on the Secretary of Education. Good pick. I was on the committee that recommended 3 candidates to the governor. That was our role. There was a committee that did that. And there were 19 different applicants from all over, not just in Vermont. They all had, not all, most all had great qualifications. Of course, people always rise to the top, and there were 3 that rose to the top. We forwarded those recommendations to the governor, and we were very pleased with the pick, so thank you for that. So if you have a question about the State Board of Education, please come see me. Our healthcare system is very fragile. Costs have exceeded reimbursement for the past 5 years. Reimbursement needs to increase. What is your position on this?
Yeah. Well, you know, it's part of the dilemma we find ourselves in. When you think about the demographics, it tells you everything. Again, 48,000 more over the age of 65 than 10 years ago. And so that leads to more usage. We also have a workforce shortage, which leads to more costs in terms of labor because we're paying for throughout, even traveling nurses to fulfill the need in the state. So we have to watch, again, what we're doing in terms of our demographics, trying to attract more people into the state. I don't believe that's by raising the cost of living in the state. I don't believe that's by raising taxes in the state. I don't believe that's by having on the mantle living in one of the most expensive states in the country. So that has to be part of the solution. But in the meantime, we have to work together. We have to make sure that we're all doing our part and we're not competing with one another in the state. So the Green Mountain Care Board is taking a look at that right now. We've been using this all-payer model for a number of years now, try and front-load some of the prevention that we need to take to be healthier. But that takes a decade or 2 or 3 to see the fruits of labor in that regard. And I know we need relief right now. So the Green Mountain Care Board is an independent body. We're looking to them. We're at the table with them. the federal government has the AHEAD model that they want us to transition to. We made application to that, but again, we need all of us to rally behind it if we're going to go down that path. And if we're not, we need to agree on how we get there, because again, we can't compete within ourselves within the state borders. We have to do our part individually to fulfill the needs of Vermonters at a price they can afford. So this isn't an easy question to answer, because there are no easy answers. But we're going to have to work at it, because, but you're right, prescription drugs, I mean, I know we've made a dent in that, but nowhere near enough. I know they're trying on the federal side as well. So it's multifaceted, but we know it's real.
Thank you for that. Education funding, you know you're going to get that question. And the yield bill, the veto, what is the answer? There were some suggestions that you made, and they were not necessarily taken up. What's the answer?
Yeah, there is no the answer. There are answers, and none of them, again, are palatable for many. They're not easy. Again, talking about some of the schools that we have, we have suggested a number of different ways we can reduce costs, and I think we're going to be forced to do that. I give a lot of credit to the legislature. We were working with them somewhat behind the scenes early in the session. And this was an ask by the speaker, and so we said, absolutely, we want to work with you. And so we did, and they came up with a few solutions that would have been good for the short term, and then looking, putting a team together to look at the long-term results. And unfortunately, when they released that, it was released for about 48 hours before they pulled back their proposal, because it was hard. They had a lot of pushback. But we would have been right there beside them, because those were the answers for the short term. And the long-term approach is something that's equally as difficult, but it needs to happen. I know that's in the bill now, but that's 2 years down the road, really, when you think about the legislative session and reports and so forth, and getting the team together. So that's not instantaneous. We need help right now. Vermonters can't afford a 14% increase. Renters can't afford a 14% increase. The increase you're going to see as business owners is going to be passed on to consumers. It just ratchets up inflation all the way around. So this is an immediate emergency situation from my standpoint, because we're going to be paying for this, or trying to pay for this, for years to come. And it doesn't go away, right? It's going to, next year, we're 6 months away from another December 1st letter. And I don't think, we sent them a December 1st letter last December and said it was going to be 18%. And then it went up to about 20%. Then it got worked down to 14% with taxes and fees and some one-time money. But that didn't solve the problem. It's still with us. So, beware. December 1st is right around the corner.
And what will be your expectation of the Secretary of Education around accountability from the schools and affordability from the schools? What expectations will you or have you set?
Yeah, it's a partnership, right? Because we're a local control state in terms of education. You pass your budgets on the local level, then you send your bill into the state, and it gets put into a pot and then divvied up and sent out. So there is some obligation on the local level and schools, but we should be putting some parameters around that as well, and that's where the legislature comes in. So they have something to shoot for. And so, again, this is all hands on deck. Everyone has to be at the table, and we just have to listen to one another. But these some of the ideas that we've had over the last 8 years that we presented that haven't been well received were in some of what the legislature, the House had proposed for that 48 hours. And I believe that's still got to be part of the solution, as difficult as it's going to be.
So laws serve as codes to live by and also incentives for us to live by. As you pointed out, Act 250 presents challenges in incentivizing commerce and affordability. Pragmatically, what do you think we should change regarding Act 250 to incentivize growth and affordability? And do you think there's a likelihood our representatives would pass such changes?
I think that the horse is out of the barn now. This new conservation bill has made significant changes to Act 250. I think we have opportunities to make that better. I am very, very concerned about what this is going to mean to rural Vermont. And when you see the map on what these different tiers are going to cover over the next few years, a significant change to Act 250 has been made. But there will be more conservation as a result, more land that will, and projects that will come under Act 250 jurisdiction. I think part of the bill goes in the right direction in terms of giving some latitude in some of the population centers. That was something that we advocated for. But we need some relief, even short-term. When I talk about short-term, we had proposed some of the short-term relief going until 2029. The Senate passed their version and went down to 2028. The final version was 2027. It doesn't really give us enough time to do all we need to do in terms of housing. Housing is a crisis today. We all, I bet there wasn't more than a dozen legislators who didn't run on housing. So we need to treat it as the crisis it is, and it is a crisis. So when that happens, you do some things that are uncomfortable. We did it during last summer's flooding, we did it during Irene, during the pandemic. We took measures that were not comfortable and were out of the ordinary. And I'd say if housing is the crisis we all say it is, and I believe it is, you have to do some things that are uncomfortable, relax some regulation, get some housing built, so that we can fix some of the other issues that we have, the demographics and so forth, so people can afford to live here.
I'm trying to understand the question a little bit here. The legislature represents the will of the electorate. How do you feel the overrides represented your response to that?
Yeah, I think, I may see it a little bit different than some who are in the legislature and part of the majority, supermajority. But when you look at the votes, okay, over the last few years, I received a substantial number of votes. I was given a direction as well. They appreciated what I was saying. So that gives me, as the chief executive, a seat at the table, or I should be at the table. There should be some compromise because I carry the voice of all Vermonters. I was elected by all Vermonters. And while I believe, the legislature is supported by constituents, they were voted in as well, not the broad majority. Again, and this isn't a derogatory statement, but when you think about the power of the supermajority, power of the speaker, the power of the pro tem, the pro tem and the speaker combined received less than 20,000 votes. I received, between 200 and 250,000. So that gives me a mandate too. And it's unfortunate that they don't listen to that mandate because, again, I think we all want the same thing. We have a different way of getting there. But I think I have my finger pretty well on the pulse of what Vermonters can accept and what they can't, when I know they can't accept a 14% increase in property taxes.
So sticking with that, as the most popular governor in the country, what can you personally do to restore the sense of civility, collaboration, integrity, empathy among all working together?
Well, again, I've always advocated for that. The last couple of years, again, have been difficult because I felt as though I wasn't being listened to at all and not having a seat at the table, so to speak. So I'm more than willing to work with anyone who's ever worked with me, understands that I like to collaborate. I understand what compromise is about. I've lived it in my business, I've lived it in political life, I've lived it in my private life. It's all about compromise and treating each other with respect and civility. So I don't know as anyone can say that I haven't treated them with respect and civility over the last 20 years of my political life. I've always served in the minority. I've never served in the majority. So, and I've always been able to get something done. And that takes work. It takes working together. And so I've reached across the aisle over many, many, many years. And as I said in my State of the State, I'm not even asking you to cross the aisle. I'm asking you to meet me in the middle somewhere. And as I said in my remarks, bipartisanship isn't a one-way street. It's a two-way street. And I've done my share of reaching across, and I think we need to reach back across. So that's.
Thank you for that. Any final questions from the audience? I see Cooper moving forward here, coming back with, hopefully it's a question I can ask. Okay, yeah. All right, because there's no pressure on the person that just gave it to you. We know it was, okay. Green Mountain Care has been conducting audits across the state, causing many health centers and mental health centers to close. How does this help the people of Vermont, and how does the state plan to help and support those small offices that support our communities?
Again, the Green Mountain Care Board is an independent authority put in place when single payer was going to be an issue. That was going to be the path we were following. And then after 4 or 5 years of studying, figured out that we couldn't afford that. But the Green Mountain Care Board is still here. Now, I appreciate the work they do, and they are looking at things from a regulatory standpoint, but also from a financial standpoint, what we can afford and what we can't. I don't know. I don't know which small offices have been shut down, but again, I appreciate what they've done, but I don't know. I'm just not aware that they have directly shut down businesses or some of these offices, designated agencies. I'm just not sure. But I can find out.
And Governor, I want to thank you for the money that has flowed to Rutland County. I don't think people are fully aware of the Killington project, where catalyst grants, cleanup funds are all coming to Rutland County. And no pressure, but Jim Half has a question, which we'll get to in a moment. We want to thank you because you have some, I won't call them aggressive, I'll call them aggressive, people in the Department of Economic Development that want to see things happen. Some of them are here today. I know Christy Farnham is here. I know Brett Long is here. And I know I just met Jessica, I can't hear you. Yes, from VEPSI, thank you very much. They have been helping us and guiding us and helping us connect the dots so that we can do cleanup, so that we can get the Killington project going, so that we can get the library done, so we can get the Farmers Food Center set, so the Paramount Theater will get their renovations done, so Center Street project in Rutland City can happen. There's a whole lot going on. It's all connected. And your folks are helping us with that. And thank you very much. And I keep kidding them that they're bringing us bags of money, and we appreciate that very much, and hopefully that will continue.
Can I just, let me just say something about that as well. First of all, I'm very, very proud of the team that we've put together across all of state government. And when we have cabinet meetings, which we have cabinet meetings once a week, when I talk to my counterparts, they have them like maybe once a quarter, once a year. Bigger states just don't get together that often, but we get together every single week. And when our first cabinet meeting, I remember saying to them, we'll be successful when we're talking not about our own issues within our own agencies and departments, but when we're reaching across and trying to help other cabinet members succeed, then we'll know we succeeded. And we do that each and every week. I mean, there are so many areas where by having that collaboration, by working together, trying to pull in the same direction, that we're able to accomplish a lot. And it was, whether it's the mobile home initiative we're doing now, we're doing that with ACCD, Department of Housing, with VTrans, with ANR. Everyone is collectively working together to try and get this accomplished, get this done, so we can have more housing in place, more units available. So I think it goes a long way. And one more thing about the investments, and this is where I give the legislature a lot of credit as well. We worked together on that. When we knew we were going to receive this money from the feds. It was going to be over $1 billion, one shot of over $1 billion, $1.25 billion, I think. And I said, we can't just spend this money. We have to invest it. And they went along with that. And we're seeing the fruits of those labors then, because had some want to just spend it and just use it to get through it, the overhead and so forth. And that's, by the way, a lot of what we're seeing with the schools. They use a lot of the one-time money receiving from the feds, and they just spent it, and they didn't invest it. And that's the problem. We need more investment, less expending money, more investments, so we get the return on investment in years to come. So, again, I thank the legislature for doing that.
A question on education. When someone new, like the new interim secretary, comes in to the Agency of Education, there are many employees in the Agency of Education. How do you harness that and pull things all in the same direction?
Yeah.
There are a lot of competing interests in education. How do you pull it all together and pull forward together?
You know, interestingly enough, the Agency of Education, while it has a lot of employees, is our smallest agency that we have, the smallest, the fewest employees. But Zoe, Secretary Saunders, has made it her mission to go out and talk with her employees, and she is trying desperately to work through all of them. She's had a lot of in-house meetings, and she is a collaborator. And for those who have questions about her, have her come in and speak to you, because once you get her and her vision and and her rapport, once you see that, you won't question why I appointed her. Because she's the right person for the job here in Vermont, and I know she, unfairly, I believe, was turned into a political statement. But she is. You should have her in, and you should talk to the chamber, and she should get around and be able to meet all of you and answer your questions.
And one thing we will never lose track of is how often does a state get to have the governor come and enjoy breakfast with you? How often do all of your legislators come and you can interact with them right in the same room that you are physically in? That happens in the state of Vermont, and that's what's special. And I would like to thank Governor Scott for continuing with the positive attitude that you bring to everything you do. You have been in the right place at the right time for so many different issues and things that are going on. We look forward to the upcoming election in November, and we want to thank the governor for being here today. Let's give him a nice round of applause for joining us. And closing comments.
Thank you, but I'd be remiss if I didn't thank all of you and all of your businesses for supporting Vermont. Without you, you're the lifeblood of Vermont, and without you, we wouldn't be able to do what we do. So we're all in this together, and look forward to continuing to work with you over the next few months. And we'll get through an election. We'll see what happens from there. But I thank you. I thank you for all the work, the hard work you're doing.
Thank you, Governor. Thank you all for coming. This is your time to rush the legislators at the front of the room with any of your questions. So enjoy your day.